Last week, we told you about some of the bombshell statements from Donald Trump's former political strategist and notable white supremacist, Steve Bannon. In the book Fire and Fury, Trump did not like it, and he was pissed. And so what he wanted to do, apparently, from reports coming out of the White House, is get some of his supporters to go to the media and attack Bannon. And what that led to was sort of a contest to see who could be most vociferous in their denouncing of Bannon and most obsequious in their support of the president. Turned out not to be much of a contest, though, because someone has already won. You're gonna see that in this clip from Stephen Miller and CNN's Jake Tapper.
Did any of those people from that meeting meet with President Trump? As Bannon says, the chance that he didn't, Don Jr. didn't walk these Jamos up to his father's office on the 26th floor is zero. Can you just settle that for us? Did President Trump meet with any of the people?
I have no knowledge of anything to do with that meeting.
Okay.
But what I can tell you unequivocally is that the allegations and insinuations in this book, which are a pure work of fiction, are nothing but a pile of trash through and through. Well, just to finish, Jake, because you know your network's been going 24/7 with all this salacious coverage, and I know that it brings a lot of you guys a lot of joy to trying to stick the knife in. But the reality is that page after page after page of the book is pure false.
So look, the entire thing is made up, although we know it is extremely unlikely that that's the case. I would say likely. I'm about 80% of the way through the book. I would imagine that some of it is probably either exaggerated or recalled in a way that's beneficial to the person doing the recalling. It is, for the most part, a book of the dueling factions inside of the White House giving information to this reporter. So it seems almost certain that they are presenting things to that reporter in a way that's beneficial to their side. But the idea that it's 100% made up, when reports are coming out that Donald Trump indeed did, this is a quote from Sebastian Gorka, that he did instruct them to talk with Michael Wolff. So we know those interviews happened.
Well, we know that he was told to. We don't know that the president told him to talk to him, right?
I mean, I believe that. I thought that he said that.
When I read the Gorka
perhaps
stuff,
you're right.
It was just that he was instructed to. I didn't know that it was Trump that instructed him to.
So the whole thing's garbage according to him, but it actually got far more aggressive, as you'll see in this next clip.
Do you think tweets like that help or hurt the cause that the president is stable and up for the job?
Not only do I think they help it, but I think in the toxic environment that you've created here in CNN and cable news, which is a real crisis of legitimacy for your network, and we saw it, of course, with the extremely fake news you reported about the Don Jr. and WikiLeaks story. There was a huge embarrassment for your network.
Stephen.
Just like the huge embarrassment you had when you got the Comey testimony wrong.
Stephen, I'm trying to get to the issue of the president's fitness, which a lot of people are questioning.
And I'm getting to the issue of your fitness, but the president's tweets absolutely reaffirmed the plain spoken truth. A self-made billionaire revolutionized reality TV and tapped into something magical that's happening in the hearts of this country. The people that you don't— The
president has an approval rating in the 30s. I don't know what magical you're talking about.
The people that you don't connect with and understand, the people whose manufacturing jobs have left, who've been besieged by high crime communities, and who've been affected by a policy of uncontrolled immigration, those voices, those experiences don't get covered on this network. That's why, to prove the point, I was booked to talk about the very issues I'm just describing, and you're not even asking about them because they're not interesting facts to you.
That's not true. I have plenty of questions on immigration. You've attempted to filibuster by talking about your flights with the president. I want to ask you a question because
don't be condescending, Jake.
Stephen, the president and the White House.
The reason why I want to talk about
the president and the White House.
The reason why I want to talk about the president's experiences, what I've seen with him traveling to meet dozens of foreign leaders, with his incredible work.
Okay, you're not answering the questions.
No,
I understand.
You have 24 hours a day of anti-Trump material, and you're not going to give 3 minutes for the American people to hear the real experience of Donald Trump.
There's one viewer that you care about right now, and you're being obsequious. You're being a factotum in order to please him, okay? And I think I've wasted enough of my viewers' time. Thank you, Stephen. As Republicans, lawmakers call for Attorney General Jeff Sessions to resign. In a major reversal, Democrats are now coming to his defense. What changed?
Well, that got exciting at the end.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, by the way, watching him, I'm sure many of you, there's different ways to verbalize this, but it seemed like I've never seen anyone attack someone so much, but look so bored while doing it.
Right, he looks, and this is just based on how he looks. I don't know or necessarily even think it's true, but he looks kind of sedated throughout that, even though he's so aggressive, like his eyes, he's got the sad eyes, like he's not moving his face much. He's just kind of like talking as quickly as he can in a monotonous way.
Yeah, he's described in the book as being not nearly as bright as he apparently thinks that he is. I mean, he's smart enough to go on the show and do what Jake Tapper is describing. Clearly, I mean, look, a lot of the guests that will go on a show like that will talk to advance a narrative, to present like an idea of what needs to happen in this country, which can be entirely deceitful, but at least you sort of get the goal. But he is going on there, as Jake Tapper describes, literally to lie to please one person, the president. And that, I've never lived in a third world dictatorship, but it feels like the sort of thing that you'd find there, where it's currying favor with the dear leader and not caring about anything else. I mean, Steve Miller, like pretending that he's the voice for disaffected and disillusioned America, that seems a little bit hard to buy. And to back up the thesis from Jake Tapper, this tweet went out immediately after from Donald Trump. Jake Tapper of fake news CNN just got destroyed in his interview with Stephen Miller of the Trump administration. Watch the hatred and unfairness of this CNN flunky. And because you can't have a Donald Trump tweet without projection, Stephen Miller is literally acting as a flunky in that interview.
Right, and that's what he is too. I mean, his job before this was he was communications director for Jeff Sessions, and before that he had the same honor of holding that job for former Representative Michelle Bachmann. So the whole idea that he's new to this, or that he has not been the sort of sycophant kind of communications figure before is ludicrous. And to your point, John, James Fallows yesterday of The Atlantic, who's a great writer, he said, in decades of seeing White House aides on TV, I can think of nothing remotely like the tone or effect that Stephen Miller has chosen. Even the testiest, Pat Buchanan, Jody Powell with Jimmy Carter, John Sununu with George Bush, all testy people, James Carville, usually feigned affability when on screen, feigned affability. This guy came in almost memorizing copy, playing to that one person.
Yeah, he said the line revolutionized reality TV twice. Before the show, we pointed out that, I didn't watch The Apprentice, but I understand the basic premise is he brought in people, they competed in a series of competitions, and then were steadily voted off the show. I'm not a historian of TV, but that doesn't seem like a revolution. Or if it was, it didn't start with The Apprentice.
Oh yeah, it wasn't a renaissance, he just carried it forward.
But he has to say those things. He has to call him a genius because he's trying to appeal purely to the president.
So it's actually that whole appearance by Stephen Miller was pretty ironic, because the whole point of him being on there was to essentially speak out against the book, or the truthfulness of the book, and he's just reinforcing what the book's main thesis is, right? That Trump is this person who needs to be surrounded by individuals who, to his face, will tell him how great he is and how right he is, but behind his back, they have all sorts of insults regarding, his mental capability, his intelligence, his fitness for office, all of that stuff. I mean, he's just literally sitting there saying all of these great things about Trump that can't be backed up. And he got so incredibly offended when Jake Tapper, accused him of trying to please Trump or speak to his audience of one, when Trump's tweet proves that's exactly what happened. Trump was sitting there. By the way, he's sitting there watching a CNN segment. He's the president of the United States. He's sitting there watching Stephen Miller's performance and then immediately tweeting about how he destroyed Jake Tapper, which
also he was at Camp David with congressional leaders, right? So he said, "Oh, everybody, stop doing what we came here to do, so we can watch Stephen Miller on Jake Tapper talk really nice things about me." I'm sorry, I'm gonna read one more tweet from Jim Fallows because it's important. The obvious difference would seem to be that all the rest were conscious of playing to larger audiences: the public, congressional foes and allies, the DC opinion machine, where it mattered they seemed likable. Miller does appear, as Tapper said, to have one person, one audience in mind, and that's unusual that this happens this way, and it's why Tapper's reaction to it I thought was so strong.
Yeah, and so you might think, so look, obviously this is disconcerting, but why have this be the first story we talk about on the show? But I think it does matter that if you analyze based on our experience watching Donald Trump, but also the information given in the book, this is a person who desperately wants to be liked and is predominantly influenced by the last person he talked to, which means that at least hypothetically, if he was surrounded by the right sort of people who could manage the worst impulses of him, his psychological and mental deficiencies, then perhaps he could be pushed in a way that he's never gonna be a good person, he's never gonna be a good president, but maybe you could get a little bit of legislation that would help this country. We do have problems that could use some fixing. But if he is continuing to surround himself, even after the ouster of Steve Bannon, by people like Stephen Miller, then it's unlikely that that's going to happen. His need to be liked and his need to lash out at the media that he wishes loved him into his second year of his presidency is the driving force of this presidency right now. And so if you have any hope for anything positive happening coming out of the White House before the next election, this is pretty good reason to believe that's not going to happen.
Right, and I just wanna make one more point about, again, the main thesis of that book, which is that he's surrounded by people who think that he's an idiot, but they won't tell him to his face. Keep in mind that this White House, this administration has had one major problem from the very beginning, which is people within the White House constantly leaking things to the media to prove how incredibly incapable Trump is of doing this job properly, right? Why do you think these leaks are coming out? They're coming out from White House staffers. And so look, there might be hyperbole in the book. There might be some moments where the writer embellishes stories. I don't know exactly where or when he does that. But nonetheless, I think the main point of the book reinforces something that we already knew about Trump and his administration.
And again, this is a last little thing. First of all, one thing I remember being on the campaign trail, watching TV and seeing Stephen Miller interviewed. Somebody asked him when he became a conservative. He became a conservative after reading a book by Wayne LaPierre of the National Rifle Association.
Are you serious?
That's how he became.
Wayne LaPierre wrote a book.
Yeah, Wayne LaPierre wrote a book. The other thing, and you and I talked about it a little bit, Johnny, before the show. The whole idea that he says, or maybe it was during the video, that he says he didn't know anything about this meeting, right? Come on. He even has said who was and wasn't there.
Yeah.
So Jake Tapper's telling him about the meeting, he knew nothing about it. Well, Jake, thanks for letting me know about that meeting.
And somewhat tangential, I guess, but just a pet peeve of mine. I sort of hinted at this when we were first talking about Fire and Fury last week. America clearly doesn't read enough. I think we can all agree on that. People who are supposed to know a lot, people who comment on politics, people working in politics, often don't know what they're talking about. So it's a pet peeve of mine that while Jake Tapper overall did a good job there, does anyone watching this video believe that Stephen Miller read the book?
Not a chance.
No, I think there's zero chance that he read it, and yet he goes on there and says that every word is garbage. If you want to make him look like a fool, I know there's no way you can make him look like a fool in front of the president or in front of Trump's ardent supporters because they don't care about books or what's in them or what's not in them. But have him demonstrate that he actually read the book first.
Right.
America needs to read more.
Yeah.
The death of expertise in this country, the anti-intellectual turn. I know that we've largely been historically an anti-intellectual country, but it's spreading. I'm excited that people are reading. That's basically the point.
Even
if this isn't necessarily the book I would recommend for them, I'm excited that America's reading.
The best thing about this, it was you, I think, because Ben called and said, John Iadarola said the best thing. He said, at least this is getting people to read, or we're talking about a book.
We had,
is what you said.
as a country,
we also got a beer sponsorship out of this, which is great too, I think.
We've, you can basically, we had Harry Potter, 50 Shades of Grey, and now this book, and I'm worried that there's nothing coming after it. But I can recommend some good books if you'd like something to read.
If you like this video, bless your heart. We got a lot more where that came from. We do a full show every day, Monday through Friday. Come enjoy it ad-free by becoming a member. TYTnetwork.com/join.